He has a channel on YouTube called The Back 40. I highly encourage you to check it out. A farmer from southwestern Missouri, Will Westmoreland, is back. Good morning, Will. Thank you so much for being here. How are you?
It's great to be here. Hey, Jane. Hey, team. I got to tell you, this is groundbreaking for me. This is my first repeat visit on a podcast.
We did it. We
You
did
did
it,
it.
folks.
Hey, not just a
Yeah.
podcast, but a live radio show, Will.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
welcome,
I'm
welcome.
excited.
And we're delighted to have you back. I thought our conversation last time, which, by the way, you can still find in our archives if you would like to hear our first conversation with Will. But you really went viral a couple of months ago, Will, when you had responded to a young farmer who had put out a TikTok who
Right.
was very concerned. He had invested some money under the Biden administration into improvements for his farm.
hmm
And then the Trump administration came in and froze all those payments. So you responded to him, and that just really kind of exploded. I'm curious what has happened since we talked to you last.
Well, so Skylar Holden was the farmer out of Jefferson County, I think it is. Anyway, up close to St. Louis. And yeah, Jane, what he had done is he had invested in farm improvements for rotational grazing by planting some warm weather grass seeds and putting up fencing and this type of thing. And then the government had come in and put a hold on that. Now, what's happened since then? Gosh, when we started this, I just thought, I hope she has a 2-hour radio show because it's going to take that long to talk
We
about
got
all
plenty
the
of time.
yeah. Okay, so those payments are still going out. They did release those payments, and Skylar was one of the first people to. They were very strategic. Let's just put it that way, and how they distributed the dollars. There's no doubt that the people that were the loudest on social media got their checks first, and Skylar was one of those. And so Skylar is still on his personal journey. I got to be honest with you. Once he got his money, a lot of the angst dried up
Oh,
around
I bet.
yeah, his concern with this administration, et cetera. But, I mean, and I'm not trying to be cavalier about this, but, with this tariff situation, we're winning some and we're losing some in terms of farmers. And for every one Skylar that goes back after they've kind of had an epiphany, there are, 3 or 4 that aren't going back. They realize this is a long-term battle for rural America, and they're sticking to their guns on pushing back against these policies. That's good news. We got to take it where we can get it.
Yep, absolutely. Josh Hawley, your very own
Yeah.
Missouri Senator Josh Hawley is applauding. This is from earlier this month on Fox 2. Is applauding Donald Trump's sweeping plan for new tariffs, calling it a win for American workers, and urging continued protection for farmers and manufacturers. So, if I take what you're saying, well, not all farmers are like, this is a great thing, because we have had discussions with Wisconsin farmers as well, and in particular
Yeah.
soybean growers. And the
Oof.
last time this happened under the Trump administration, and yes, he cut the farmers a big check because they were taking such a hit on this, but a lot of those markets never came back.
That's right. That's right. So I'd be remiss if I didn't go on the record to say that the closest Josh Hawley's ever come to a farm is when he goes up to the state fair every year and dusts his cowboy boots off and his Wrangler jeans and goes and gets the crease put in him at the laundromat and then goes to the
Nice.
state fair. So take
Nice.
it with a grain of salt. But yeah, to your point, the uncertainty is just, collapsing in on itself. So you're going to be really hard pressed to find a farmer that says the tariffs are a good idea. The president's most ardent supporters in agriculture, the closest they'll come is they're still saying, well, I'm going to trust him that he knows what he's doing. So even though these tariffs are really bad and we're struggling, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt that in the long run, this is going to pay off. But Jane, that's a very, very small number of farmers that, that still believe that way. If you talk to, I was just speaking to a friend of mine who works for a really large agricultural planning organization, PLANNING, and she's based in North Dakota. And she was just talking today about all of the farmers that live around here, that do row cropping, are struggling with what to do. They're trying to plant crops that are going to get the most crop insurance because they don't know if there's going to be profitability in harvesting what they normally do. Number two, right now, as the markets were playing out this morning, there's still not a single crop that coming out of the ground pays for itself. So farmers are banking on these, subsidies that may or may not come. We may get some subsidies this year, because that money had already been set aside by Congress. But the big message coming out of the USDA is maybe you'll get 85% of what you were expecting, and don't plan on anything going forward. We're going to cut all of that.
Well, I mean, let me ask a very elementary question, as I am not a farmer and my Wranglers are quite crisp as well.
Yeah.
How do farmers survive and go on then? I mean, I guess the bigger question is, do you know any farmers who are looking to 5 years down the road saying, I think I know I have to shut this down because it will not be sustainable? I mean, it seems like they're
Yeah.
giving them just a future of, you're done and sorry, and hopefully the insurance pays off and see you later.
Yeah, there are quite a few farmers that will tell you that if things keep going the way they're going now, and that they're expected to go, that their farms are in danger. Now, you can't be a farmer without being hopeful. So I think that there are still a lot of farmers out there that are hoping at some point, their senator, their congressperson in their state, somebody's going to set up, and stand up, and at least at a minimum, they're going to get the bailout subsidies that they need, maybe just to keep the farm going. There won't be any profitability in that. They may take a hit. It may be really bad, but can we just survive until the end of this administration so that, when things quote unquote get back to normal, we'll be okay? I think that's the key mentality out there right now. But absolutely, I've talked to all kinds of farmers that have said, I'm looking down the road, and if things don't change at all and we don't get subsidies and these programs don't pay out, it's going to be really bad. And their fear is, of course, consolidation, right? We've already seen that in that row crop, farming is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And you've got really powerful, large corporate ag interests that control, everything from what gets planted to what gets sold and how. And we're even starting to see the first remnants of that now in beef as well, because of, China's recent actions on beef. And yeah, Jane, to your point, like before the first Trump administration, Brazil sold China 13% of their row crops. That's higher even now than when I came on the last time I told you it was at 43. In some cases, is at 48 now. And to your point, that's never going to come back. And where are we going to find those markets?
Well,
I'm sorry, I went off on a little bit of a tangent there, but
that's fine.
It's bad, guys. It's really bad.
Well, and I guess, that's where I don't understand with that portion who are still, it's bad and this seems like a bad decision, but I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. At some point, don't you run out of those benefits?
Yeah, you will about harvest time. Not saying that, to be funny, but yeah, you will about harvest time, because right now, like I said, corn seems to be the one thing for whatever reason. Maybe it's the subsidies to create more ethanols. Corn seems to be the one thing that everybody's running to right now, because it looks like, not that it's going to be profitable at the harvest, but it's going to have the highest level of subsidy, through the crop insurance program, et cetera. So now we've got farmers out there that are growing food for the United States and the rest of the world that are not making those decisions purely based on supply and demand, but they're making them based on how much is the insurance going to pay off in the end. And that's just not where we want to be, And
I have to imagine if you spend a good amount of your life, I don't know, raising cows on a dairy farm, to just switch to corn, that can't be the easiest and, might I say, inexpensive transition to make.
Yeah, and it's not if you haven't planned ahead for it. But the bigger thing even that's happening out there is that some row crop farmers are starting to incorporate beef, into raising cattle into their operation, because our cattle herds are at a 70-year low, and that's kept prices high. So you've had some row crop farmers, that have been, putting in those grasses maybe where they would have planted a row crop before, so that they can incorporate cattle into the overall model. But the problem with that is now he's making bad decisions that are impacting cattle. The Chinese just said, we're not going to buy $1.6 billion worth of American beef. And Jane, to your earlier point, just like they did with row crops, Australia immediately stepped in and said, hey, we've got all the beef you need. And they're selling that. They replaced that market overnight. So it's just happening, across the board. So everywhere the farmers are going to escape this or trying to change their plan, it's just that whack-a-mole from the administration with bad policy.
If you're just joining us, Will Westmoreland is our guest. He's the executive director of the Back 40 on YouTube. I highly encourage you to check out the Back 40. You'll learn a lot, and it's always. But again, it's. I didn't grow up a farmer. I grew up in a small town, and I think it's important we understand how these areas, especially the people who are feeding us,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
what it is that they're dealing with. I'm curious, Will, now when we slide over a little bit to the immigration issue, what would it mean for farmers in your area if every immigrant was pulled off of the working farms? Would that be
Well,
catastrophic or not?
it would be across the country. Where I live, we're kind of beef oriented. I grew up in like the second largest beef producing county in Missouri, and a lot of people don't know this, but Missouri is usually in the top 3 or 4 in regard to beef production, and a lot of that is family run. Beef seems to be the one area as of right now, like I said earlier, that hasn't gone into this, horizontal growth pattern where big corporations are running everything. Now, once that beef leaves the farm, yes, it's all corporate. But
Yep.
anyway, to your point, but everywhere else in the country, yeah, it's a huge issue. So I've got family that owns a really large farm in Imperial Valley, California. We experienced this during COVID where we had crops rotting in the field because a lot of our migrant workers had gone back to their country of origination. 70% of the workers in agriculture are migrant workers, and 50% are undocumented. So when the Trump administration did these raids early on, like in the San Joaquin Valley, et cetera, that led to a 75% reduction in attendance for people showing up on the farm. So the brief answer to your question is yes, where immigrant labor is a big part of the agricultural picture, it's been devastating with attendance rates as low as 75%, crops rotting in the field, dairy milk not getting pumped, all kinds of things like that.
Well, and what I'm taking from the administration apparently is that all of the federal workers that they have been firing, I guess they should just be coming to work in the fields now because where is this workforce going to come from?
Jane, that's our
Where are these
biggest fear.
replacement
Yeah,
workers going to come from?
that's our biggest fear at the back 40 is that our 400 largest agricultural counties in this country are shrinking. Hospitals are going away, schools are consolidating, businesses are going away, the population overall is going away, farmers are aging out. So that's our big concern. Like we're not talking about someday rural America dying, it's happening right in front of us. And if we don't jump in now to fix the problem, it's going to be gone, and the people working those farms, to your point, are going to be the people that used to own them before corporations bought them out.
And that's something that I want to talk about as
Yeah.
well is the corporatization
Yes.
of farming in the United States. We're going to continue our conversation with Will Westmoreland. Check out the Back 40. That's his channel on YouTube. You are listening to Matenaer on Air. Stay close. This is the Civic Media Radio Network. We'll be right back. Good morning and welcome back to Matenaer on Air. Jane Matenaer, Greg Bach, and our resident young person, Calvin, on the board. Coming to you from our studio at Radio Park in Racine, where you can always join us. Call or text. The number is the same, 855-752-4842. You can leave a comment as well if you're watching on the live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and what used to be Twitter. Coming up after the 10:30 news, it is a segment that has turned into audio sorbet. We like to take a little breath, a little cleansing for your ears away from all the politics and all the other exhausting things, and we just try and lighten things up a little bit for the last half hour of the show. So we're going to talk about the latest inductees into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and everyone has one band their ticked off isn't in there yet.
Oh, yes.
So we want to hear the band that you think is deserving and is still waiting to get into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And then we'll wrap up the show as we always do with This Shouldn't Be a Thing. Today it is the Climb Every Mountain edition, so stay tuned for that. Right now, though, our guest is the executive director of the Back 40. That is his channel on YouTube. Will Westmoreland is here. He's a farmer in southwestern Missouri, and I'm so glad to have you back, Bill. Will, just to give us a little bit of an update from the last time you were on. The last time you were on, we were talking about the corporatization of farming, and under the first Trump administration, Sonny Perdue was the head of agriculture, and I remember this like it was yesterday when he told farmers essentially, go big or go home.
Yeah.
So if you can't grow, if you can't continue to grow, we don't care if you go out of business. And that does still seem to be the same attitude now under Trump too.
Yeah, he was actually standing right there near you in Wisconsin when he made those comments. And it was a dairy farmer that asked the question, and that was, hey, consolidation is just killing us. I mean, the big, corporate dairy farms are the ones that have the most amount of security through subsidies and listed off these other things. And Sonny said, well, this is the United States of America. You either go big or you go out. And when the president was asked to clarify those comments a few weeks later, he didn't say, no, Sonny's wrong. We need to protect the small farmer and rancher, and their policies kind of reflect that mentality. And Jane, we didn't get to dig into this a lot the last time because we had that crisis of, payments not going out. But
Yep.
corporatization is a big issue because now it's in every single level of agriculture. So you've got giant corporate ag that controls the seed market. You've got giant corporate ag that controls pesticides, fertilizers, fungicides, and now it's crept into farmland. So the USDA, they look every year and they talk about how much farmland is owned and operated by family farmers. But the problem is they measure that by, does a family own the land? So they put out this report that says 95% of all US farms in 2022 are family owned and operated. But then what that doesn't reflect is, yes, they're owned by a family, but not a family of farmers. So 40% of the farmland out there is owned by families, but it's not farmed by them. It's corporately owned by families, and they rent the land out to other farmers or to other corporations. So it's deceiving. It's deceiving because you think, well, 95% are still small farms and ranches. No, 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 no. That just means they're family owned. And you've got a lot of, and in some places like Iowa, not too far from you guys, closer to you, it's as high as 50%. So it really climbs up there, like half the land. Yes, it's owned by a family, but it's still put to corporate use. And then you've got these big companies like Nuveen and Acre Trader and Manulife. They're coming in and they're buying up large swaths of all kinds of land, not only land to plant row crops on, but land where we raise cattle. I'll give you guys a quick example. There's 180 acres that went on the market down in Oklahoma, and there was an article that you had 3 farmers that went to their local banks and said, will you give us the backing, the loan that we need to buy this land? And because of the market values there, their bank said, yeah, you can go up to 1 million, 1.2 million for this 180 acres. You had a corporate ag investor that came in and bought it for over 4 million. And at that number, there's just no way, if a farmer wants to make a profit during his lifetime or even his kid's lifetime, that they can make that math work. Well, a corporation can, because they're buying it for 100 years from now, 150 years from now. When will it pay off? And so you've got it at every level, even in the processing of food. I mean, you guys read the stories about companies like Tyson, et cetera. They not only tell their farmers that are working for them what they can raise, but how much of it to raise. And that's another big problem that we've got right now is we've got this siloed production owned by corporate ag where the market isn't determining what should be raised and sold, but profitability at these companies is determining that. And it's leading to less diversity, in the marketplace and not more.
But their profits are going up. But the corporate profits are going up. And please don't think this isn't happening in Wisconsin. There is an expansion of a dairy operation in northwestern Wisconsin that I have been looking into, and it is owned by a family, Will, which is interesting that you said that. But when I looked a little bit further about who is funding this expansion, there's a hedge fund guy from Louisiana who is kicking in the vast majority of the money for this. So as you said, the family still technically owns it, but they're getting funding from all kinds of outsourced and outstate interests.
Yeah, they've made the transition from a family farm to an investment farm. And the simple fact is that that's what the system encourages. They want you to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and then eventually you're And I'm not talking about the corporatization like where Will decides to do everything under an LLC so that he's got liability coverage, that kind of thing. I'm just talking about mass corporatization where the entire production silo is owned by 2 or 3 or 4 different big companies.
Yeah, that's not the way we want to go. Will Westmoreland, check him out on YouTube. His channel is called The Back 40. We would love to have you back, Will. Lots and lots more to talk about. Thank you so very much for your time. Really appreciate it.
You bet. Have a great day, guys. Thanks a lot.
You as well.